So, next speaker, I'm very happy to welcome Dr. David Ermen. During the last 4 days, we have heard two words over and over again. One is destination capacity, and the next word or next sentence is the need for optimizing our processes. Very excited to welcome David and his colleague. We have agreed that David will introduce his colleague himself. David joins us from New Zealand, and you see, as we have discussed, three major challenges for our tourism organizations going forward. First is the need for improve our processes because of COVID. Secondly, there is a bridge between the customers wanting health solutions. They want to make sure that everything health-wise is okay, but still they want a very smooth and easy experience when they're visiting. And then, as you have said, strong leadership is needed. David has been working on tourism strategies. He has led tourism and education strategy projects all over and designed quality management systems for hotel chains, international chains. Today, David is helping tourism organizations and businesses in developing and developed countries in setting strategies, improve operations. Improve operations is very often a bit tougher than setting strategies, and sustainability. David, I'm very happy to welcome you and your colleague. We have agreed that you introduce your colleague yourself, so please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you very much for the introduction, Jan, and thank you for having us here at the BUZZ Expo. Exciting to be part of the first virtual online travel expo, and as we said before, I'm sure there'll be many to come. So welcome everybody. As Jan said, I'm based in New Zealand, so it's nice and early here. My colleague who will be helping me through this session and especially moderating the discussion is Bettina Bülte. She's based in Switzerland, so we're really covering both sides of the globe today. Bettina and I have worked together for many years, and she's currently working with G&B Consulting, hospitality consulting in Switzerland. They focus on tourism and hospitality optimization. So looking forward to having this discussion here today. Good morning, Bettina. Okay, so without further ado, we'll get into this presentation. We will leave plenty of time for discussion. So please leave your questions in the Q&A, or you also get opportunity to ask questions afterwards. So before we get into the details, I'd actually like to ask you some question, and hopefully you have your mobile phone with you. You get to use it in this session. So if you could go to either through a different tab in your web browser, or through your phone, go to menti.com. You should see that up on your screen right now. Very short URL there, and enter in the numbers 740511, or if you're on your phone, you can also scan the QR code at the bottom. I will just put this link in the chat for you as well, so just give you some time to load in there. We have a few questions for you just to sort of place where we are, who we're speaking to. It's always difficult in this virtual sort of setup to see who is in the room, let's say. So I hope you've all got that number. If you haven't, you will see it on the next screen as well. So here we go. You see it at the top of your screen, menti.com, number 740511. A few answers already coming in. First question, which industry sector do you represent? So far, hospitality and other. Other is always nice. Hopefully we get a few more people voting here. That will help with the next few questions as well. Just give this one more second. Yeah, everyone is other. Okay, that doesn't make it too much easier to target you all. I thought we'd covered quite a few people under the other sectors we have there, but that's fine. Maybe we've got some more differentiated answers to the next question. So the next question here is, what is the biggest challenge for you, for your business right now? I think there will be one very popular one, but if you can be a little bit more specific in what your challenges are here, just 3 short words, we will know a little bit more about what your challenges are, and we can address these in this presentation, because we want to try and make this as practical and applicable to you as possible. No one's typing so far. Okay, maybe we just give it 1 more minute. Oh, uncertainty. Yeah, that's certainly a big one. Sustainability, regulation, yeah. And some uncertainty is definitely the favorite so far. COVID, yeah. I guess that's the base for some of the uncertainty. Budgeting for next year, yeah, very good. Excellent. Okay, it's all about uncertainty. That's nice. Well, it's obviously not nice to have uncertainty, but I think this is a good topic and one that we can cover during these next 20 minutes or so. One more question for you. This is an easy one. You just need to tick a box. How much of each of these factors changed for you due to COVID? The regulations that surround your business, the customer needs, perhaps, and finally, your business processes, because that's what we want to be talking about today. Okay, I guess when there's a lot of uncertainty, there's usually things changing all around you. This 1 more second. Oh, yeah. Regulations seem to be number 1, and that's the first point we'll be covering, so that's great. So thank you for your input. These surveys this should remain open, so if you have further input after we sign off, please feel free to share that. So I hope you can all see my presentation again now. So the session outline for today and what we really want to cover is the following. First, the impact of COVID. And I don't want to bore you with too many numbers and everything. I'm sure you've seen them all over the last few days, and these have created a lot of your uncertainty. We'll talk about process challenges, 3 in particular. We'll talk about rebuilding trust, because I think that is one of the key topics that we have at the moment. Because in the end, when tourism comes back, customers need to trust that they will be safe in their tourism experience, that they can trust the businesses to take care of them, and that they are cared for in many ways. Finally, we'll have time for discussion, which Bettina will moderate for us. And I hope to get some questions either through the webinar chat or otherwise you can also ask them, I guess. So going straight into it, I think you've all seen these numbers. This is the UNWTO's international tourism arrival scenarios. Basically, our industry went into freefall. We've lost about 20 years worth of growth, going from being well ahead of the curve and it looked like we were going to achieve our arrival numbers for 2020, for 2030 much earlier. And now we're back to somewhere in the 90s, looking at the international visitor arrivals. Especially this year, we'll see a huge dip. And this is forcing industries, all industries related to tourism, to take a very different look at what is going on and how to survive initially, which is obviously a very stressful situation, and no one expected this to happen. I've spoken to people in leadership roles in different countries around the world, and even the most diligent companies or boards did not have this on their risk map. Even companies that were doing significant risk management and really looking into the future and seeing what would happen if no one predicted there to be no flights anywhere on the planet, for borders to be closed, for customers to be scared to travel, and for basically international border closures for such a significant amount of time. And I mean, we're seeing some loosening now, so that's good. But looking forward to this year and to next year, we're still working with scenarios. There's no real possibility to forecast just yet, because we haven't seen anything like this. And forecasts are always at least partially based on historical data, and we don't have historical data on a set of circumstances like this. One of the things that's happening is that many businesses still sort of playing catch up. For one, we have regulation that is still changing internationally. On a daily basis, we get updates on which borders will open, who will let in whom. Airlines are looking at releasing capacity again, getting people moving. So it's really still a shifting target. Businesses haven't had time to really get back to even a new normal yet. And it's really this catch up that throws business into disarray, and especially the well-tuned processes that the hospitality and the tourism industry relied on to be efficient and to serve their customers well. They have really had to change in this whole process. And all businesses, as far as I can tell, now work under severe regulation, and be it in terms of basic health and safety standards, hand washing, hand sanitizer, wearing masks, working from home, being able to let in a certain number of guests, social distancing like this. This was not that was introduced slowly, but these things came overnight, and businesses had to adjust and sort of get this built into their processes. At the same time, consumers have changed as well. In a lot of places, consumers have actually become very, very cautious. They've gotten used to this social distancing. They've gotten used to these measures. And I mean, New Zealand, the restrictions were loosened. It actually felt strange to be close to people. Walking outside, you still sort of go to the other side of the footpath when someone comes towards you, because we've gotten used to be far away from people, and it actually feels very strange to go back into these environments. And you feel quite insecure at first, because even if you're told it's safe, there shouldn't be any cases, and we're doing everything we can. Do I, as a consumer, really feel safe? So consumers also have this changed need for safety or security in their daily interaction. Businesses are really feeling quite squeezed. Our consumers have changed, our market has changed, and the regulation that we operate on a daily basis has significantly changed in most countries. So this poses three challenges, and I know we said we would talk about process optimization. Since we've got a wide range of industries in this podcast, in this webinar, including a lot of others, we don't just want to we don't know exactly who you are, so we'll do this a little bit of a higher level, because process optimization starts with people and with general processes, and then every business can break this down for their own requirements. So if you're feeling squeezed, we hope we can give you a few tips on how to get out of this bind, and at least sort of adapt to or cope with this new normal, because it's likely that some of these things are here to stay. This is not a temporary solution. Some of these process changes might be here for the longer term. So if we look at the first challenge, basically there's just new process steps. If you told us in January that having a bottle of hand sanitizer at the entrance to every business and that sanitizing your hands and signing into a contract tracing sheet or scanning an app was going to be a normal step of your arrival process in any hospitality business, we would have laughed at you because no one thought this would happen. But in quite a short time, we've actually gotten used to this. Now, if you walk into a restaurant, the first thing you look for is, well, where's the hand sanitizer? You know, is everything safe? Is this? So we quite quickly adapted to this as consumers, but businesses, obviously, having to order bulk hand sanitizer wasn't part of your purchasing list initially. Having these refilled over the day, having the contact tracing in place, these were all things that weren't part of our processes, so they were something we needed to integrate. And this sort of safety, people wearing masks, only takeaway cups, you know, which is unfortunate for sustainability. The reusable cups were much better, but especially in a pandemic situation, sort of things as bringing your own cup to the cafe is no longer really an option. Everything's in paper bags, or sadly in some places, plastic bags. So a lot of these reusable items that we tried to eliminate out of some of our process chains initially are actually back in now for safety reasons. So while we're working on the economic sustainability of our industry, we've actually taken a step back in some sense on some other sustainability fronts, and businesses need to adapt to this again. So the lesson really is that these safety measures are here to stay, and much like after 9/11, which introduced a lot of new safety measures, which at the time we thought were temporary at airports, well, they've stayed, and it's also with some of these health and safety measures that have been introduced here, it's likely that they will be around for longer. So instead of just tacking these on to existing processes that you have, it might be worth sort of taking a step back. I mean, this is a building blueprint, I realize that, but you can also blueprint your processes, because in the end, both your building and your operational standards may actually change. If you need to keep guests safe, you might be spreading tables out more in restaurants. There might be different queuing mechanisms to keep people further away from each other. You might even not have an actual queue anymore. You might have a virtual queue using apps or technology to keep people apart, to get people to order before they get to the restaurants. So at the moment, we're still trying to adapt to this new normal within the facilities that we had before. And sometimes we're sort of putting band-aids on some of these systems. But if you think that maybe some of these health and safety standards will be around for 1 or 2 years, it pays to take a step back and really take a closer look at, okay, how can we achieve the goal of meeting our regulatory requirements for safety in a more efficient way? So rather than having it be something of an afterthought, how can we integrate it into how we run our business processes? So that's lesson 1, really. Have a look at the regulations that your industry is hit by, and really take a deeper look at how you can integrate these into your daily operations on a more permanent basis, because that will make it more efficient as well. Customers are much more demanding, not only in service standards, they always have been. Customers expect the best, but now also in safety. So they really expect this excellent first-class service, but in a safe version. So they're not willing, that they want to be safe from a lot of surveys that I've seen. And at the same time, they still want a good experience. So in the first few weeks after the pandemic struck various countries, everyone was thrown into chaos, the businesses. So initially, customers might have been more lenient. They were happy just to get service at all. But now that this has been going for, well, 5 months in some places, and still ongoing, customers are expecting for businesses, I think, to achieve this balance, to provide them with a good experience, a good customer experience, proper service, but at the same time still keeping their health and safety in mind. Because in the end, it's the businesses can just follow the regulations, or they can go one step further. And I think keeping people safe, especially people that are in the risk group, perhaps, people that have some sort of respiratory illness as well, or people of a certain age, or with other underlying health concerns, are very scared to go into environments where they might be exposed to to health threats, including the COVID, the coronavirus. So there is an opportunity here to make these people feel extra safe, and to give them a great customer experience that also really takes care of some of these concerns that they might have. One thing that was said here in New Zealand by our Prime Minister during the pandemic was be kind to each other, be nice to each other, because everyone is stressed. Everyone is not comfortable with this situation. No one's been here before, so it creates a lot of stress. And if you can be the business that really takes care of people, perhaps you have different days where you have extra safety measures and only take on board or only take on people from the risk group to make them feel extra safe. We had this here in New Zealand, that some shopping centres only opened for elderly visitors up until a certain time, and then let in other people to try and break these groups apart and make them feel extra safe. I think that was an initiative that worked well, and it's something that other businesses can replicate, because people want both. They want a good experience. They want to have some fun, but they still want to be safe. And this is a difficult thing to integrate, especially if you're thinking about reopening bars, restaurants, concerts, even choirs, and places of worship where people get together at in very close quarters for an extended period of time. We are social beings, and we all want to have these social experiences, but at the moment we also want to be safe. So hence this is a squeezing, where companies are really sort of squeezed between these regulations of having to keep people safe, but also wanting to keep people safe, yet still give them a good experience. And that's what we need to juggle at the moment. And especially from some of the surveys I've seen, especially the younger generations are struggling with this, of being confined to lockdowns, being away from people because they're just so used to being around other people. So this is something that's still developing, but here, once again, it's an opportunity to position your business. If you can offer a great experience, but in a very safe environment, then you have an opportunity here to win new customers and to show them that you care for them. I think that's the most important thing. And in the end, guests will really appreciate this care, So you can reduce the risks for them in one way or another, and build some safe wow moments. Airlines, for example, I saw the other day, Lufthansa is now offering a guaranteed flight home for people that are scared to go on holiday in case they get stuck in Spain or somewhere else during the vacation. I mean, there's worse places to get stuck, but people can definitely have this fear, because there was all these stories of people going away and they're not getting a flight home, that just by making this promise, that they're really trying to reduce people's feeling of risk in this whole situation. So then thirdly, and this is where it all comes together, is leadership needs to, leadership in hospitality and tourism needs to lead the way. We need to balance the regulation with the customer experience, and we need to lead from the front, because in some cases, the businesses have much more experience in what is safe and what is actually risky. So we need to make sure that if customers or our staff are going down any sort of risky path, we need to make sure that we can actually bring them back to safety. Because so far we've talked a lot about keeping our customers safe, but there's also a huge responsibility for businesses and a huge opportunity also in caring for our staff. Staff are stressed at the moment. They're under pressure. If they're on the front line, they might be exposing themselves to infection. They're dealing with customers that might be more irritable than usual. At the same time, some of them might be scared of losing their jobs, especially if you look at some of those initial numbers we shared on how our industry is performing. And in the end, it all comes down to trust. Customers and both want to trust the companies, right? They even need to. If a staff member feels safe in what they do, in their and they feel safe that their job will be around, they feel safe that they're being provided with all the equipment, so be this PPE, be this enough leave, be this from customers, environments where you're dealing with customers over a counter over and over again. This trust, companies need to win this trust again. There was a lot of trusted brands before, but in this new environment, there's an opportunity for brands to either re-establish this with their customers, or to build this reputation. And processes are a big part of this. There's consistent steps that we take that day or not, but if you have proper processes and systems in place, then you can be sure, or your customers and your staff can be sure, that you're taking care of them over and over again. But this takes leadership from the front. And I think managers and business owners, also, I guess, political leaders or leaders of any other denomination, they must show what is the right thing to do, and they must take this opportunity. They must really take a stand on this. Take an example. If you have social distancing measures in place in your business, in your restaurant, and then there is a group of customers that don't adhere to this, that get very close to each other or close to other tables, there might be someone coughing, that you empower your staff and make sure that they can tell these guests that they're not meeting your guidelines, the guidelines that you as a company have set to keep your staff and your customers. And if need be, the managers might need to step in to back up the staff member in enforcing these rules. Because if you want to position yourself and create these safe wow moments, then you need to do it consistently. And you can't let a guest get away with bad behavior in a way, because you want to build that your processes are going to keep both your staff and your guest and providing a good experience throughout this. So that's basically the third lesson. If you're going to be looking at your processes in more detail, having good processes, but in the end, managers actually need to make sure that they are lived and that they are implemented as well. So the first point for the process is you have to consider mechanisms to repeatedly ensure that customers trust with both of those stakeholder groups over time. Especially as tourism comes back, you want to keep your staff safe and your customers safe. Customers want to travel, and there's positive indications there that people want to go back to traveling, but they want to do so in a safe manner. So it's really this balance. If you're going to get people back into your business businesses, onto your airplanes, into your restaurants, into your accommodation, that you're keeping them safe. And I think that the regulation and the safety measures, it's not just and also opportunities to create our moments, to create these really positive touch points that you have their best interests in mind. You need to lead by example. I think that's one of the big ones. If you're going to be telling your staff to wear masks and to keep social distance, then you can't be walking around without a mask and shaking people's hands. As much as that might be the habit, or it's a nice thing to get back to doing, but it's right now, you need to lead by example. And if your business has chosen to go with certain rules, then you as the leader need to work with this. And this could be the leader at the top of the organization, the middle management, even the supervisors. Everyone that has any sort of leadership role in needs to show that they care by following the examples that they set. And I think some people think these COVID things are going to go away very quickly. So these process changes. But I'd be interested to hear your comments on this, but I have a feeling that some of these things, the increased hygiene measures, social distancing to a certain degree, will be with us. So take a step back, take a blank piece of paper as you see there, and really plan these process improvements from the bottom up. Don't just tack processes on top of what you had before and wait for the day that you can get back to those original processes. In some cases, it might be worth actually rewriting your processes at a more basic level, because that will be more efficient now. It will set you up better for this world that we have post-COVID. So with that, we've left plenty of time for discussions and inputs. I would like to hand over to Bettina and just see, do we have any comments or questions yet?
No, we don't at the moment, not yet. But maybe I thought I would like to pick up on something that came from the word cloud in the beginning, because the biggest word that we have is certainty, right? And I just wanted to comment on that a little bit, or share a few thoughts, because I thought about this today actually. And I think it's interesting, because I think it's in our nature to look for the next thing. What is the new normal? We try to really put it down and lay it out, etc. And that might just not be the right strategy for this time, because I think uncertainty will stay with us a little bit longer. So I think one of the first things that I see is vital is to think about your business and really look at it from an economic sense of, if I take all those measures, if I change some of the processes, etc., and if I can only run at a 30% occupancy for a restaurant or for a hotel or for a tour operator with lower business at the moment, how much input and output do I have economically? And does that make sense? Because I think sometimes, and we need to look that in the eye, I guess. I think there is out there that say, it doesn't make sense to open. Let's lay low for a few more weeks, whatever. So I think that's the first thing, to really take those tough decisions. And I think the other one that I find very important to certainty, or to deal with uncertainty, is to really put down a governance structure and processes around how can you be as flexible as possible. So how can you or outsource some of your staff? How can you look that you can get them in fast when demand spikes, and reduce the number of people when it is slower or some borders are closing again, etc. Which products or services are essential, and which ones can you happily reduce at the moment in order to minimize costs, etc. So I think it's important to look at one's business from that standpoint, in the sense of like, what can I do in order to up the flexibility and the agility of my business? Because I mean, we see it in several states in the United States going backwards and closing again, as well in Germany, etc. There are smaller lockdowns again. So I think this will happen frequently. And I think that might be something to address the uncertainty that we at the moment need to live with, I guess.
It's a very good point, and I think and as I said at the start, that no one had this on their risk monitor. We had very bounded rationality. We thought, oh, what if we have a water leak and we need to close for a week? That was probably sort of the worst case. But no one took it this far. But I think you're right. Businesses need to be careful when reopening, and this sometimes maybe also taking some of the regulation with a grain of sand, and really sort of really try to figure out what is right for your business. How will you keep your customers safe? How can you provide work for your staff when the traditional work is not there and a lot of businesses, even very restaurants, switched from having people in the restaurant to deliveries. Hotels have been turned into quarantine facilities, even to homes being used for quarantine facilities. Very nice and flexible, I guess. Rental car company from a complete or mostly international visitor base to offering them at a discounted rate, but offering them to domestic travelers who normally would never rent a motorhome. So it's as you said, it is this agility, and it's sort of going away from some of the options that we had about what our business is, offering new solutions. I think there's been some great examples of creativity, of innovation. You hear of distilleries that switch from making gin to making hand sanitizer, or various things, just to try and keep their staff employed. So I think that's a very good point, and we for there to be several setbacks, really settle into a new normal. As you said, there are several places around the world that are experiencing a second wave, or maybe it's still the end of the first. So I think businesses just need to be prepared for this. More contracted staff being used, serving different customer groups, trying to spread their base a little bit more, rather than relying on a consistent flow of one type of tourist, perhaps. Working on multiple different groups. So that will be interesting, and to see this in their local environment. I see a question here now. Thank you, Jan. A lot of small businesses don't have a description of their processes. You're right, and we would definitely recommend that. It's depending on the type of business, you might go deeper. So this doesn't need to be a 100-page document describing everything you do, like the McDonald's handbooks, the franchise manual, or science. But I think I would recommend that I've done this with smaller clients that I've worked with, and you can just sketch this on a whiteboard, on some pieces of paper, is if you map out what are the steps that your customer goes through, customer journey. So from first seeing your business on a website or on booking.com, to booking, to arriving at a hotel, let's say, if it's a hotel property, to staying, to taking care, to using the services on site in the destination, and then to traveling home again, the steps that the customer needs to take, and then think, well, what can my business do to make this easier for them, to make this more enjoyable for them, and in the current situation, to keep them safe. And some of these might be responsibilities, of course. If they have to fly to see your business, then a lot of the safety sits on the airlines or on the arrival process at the airports or on the transport to your hotel. So that's where it's also important for your local destination organizations, because if you want to be a safe business, it's very helpful if the rest of your destination stakeholders, and I know you had 2 days of talking about destinations earlier, but I think it's the truth that every business is part of a destination system, and we can't, well, very few businesses, let's say, can manage that whole chain from the people's home to the nation and back again, out of one sort of business process. So in general, I would definitely recommend a written analysis. And this can be a brainstorming session with the owner and the managers. Start with the customer journey. Start with all the steps that the customer needs to take, and then break it down to what can we do to make it easier. What are some steps that we might be able to do remotely now? For example, if you don't want people queuing in front of your restaurant or your business, then you might only take people on by with reservations, or people that have booked in before. You might have a virtual queuing app. You know, they're available to try and keep that distance. But if you start with that customer process, then you will hit those touch points where you can increase safety. And the idea, I guess, is to still keep it personalized. You still want to engage with your guests, but maybe at a safe distance, or ensure that those staff that will be handling guests have PPE, that they have the right equipment to do the job, where there might be some staff that are in the back office who take the calls, etc., who won't need so much protective equipment. So it also helps you to plan, equipment do I need, what kind of protection do my staff members need, maybe some of the jobs they can do from home. A call center can be run from home, that's no problem. Everyone can stay in their own bubble. So in general, not just in this pandemic in general, I think it helps to write down your processes, even at a very basic level, because if you've written it down, you can analyze it and you can improve it. Bettina, maybe you have a comment on this as well. I know you're a fan of writing things down.
I am. I'm very Swiss in that regard. Yeah. No, I think, or only one thing I would love to compliment on that answer. I think why it is so important is, one is consistency that you mentioned before, David. I think, and this is even more important in an environment where we would like to create trust. So consistency is achieved by doing it all the time the same way. And secondly, it's important to get all this knowledge of your staff into your business, because people leave, people may fall sick, touch wood, etc. And it's important. We have seen it so many times when this is an actual business risk, because it relies on this lady in whichever department who is there for 20 years. And then suddenly she leaves. So that's why this is so important. And David is right. You can do this in various levels of detail, but it's important to have a little treasure chest of your business in that regard. Actually, Natalie just asked a question. She's wondering how to the different the difference in process or the difference in development that the different countries are. In the US, I understand, and obviously Switzerland and the US are in a different place on the curve, and she wonders how can she sort of balance the different regulations in the different countries in such an international industry, and whether you have thoughts about that.
It's a very good question, and I think that will be one of the key questions that start to open. I mean, even within the European Union, there is a variety of different rules and regulations. Let's say there's some consistency, but each country is also on a slightly different path, a slightly different trajectory in terms of new cases, recovering cases, all of this. I mean, it comes back to what you want to position yourself as a business. If you want to make sure that you're keeping your customers safe, you probably want to go to the more stringent one. So let's say the Swiss rules than the US rules. In this particular scenario, I would go for the Swiss rules, because that way you're selling safety, security, trust. I guess Switzerland prides itself on being reliable and consistent. So that would fit with the brand. And I think for some guests, that extra reassurance might be a selling point, because I'm sure there will be customers in the United States that are feeling very uneasy at the moment with the developments there, like to go to a place like Switzerland where there are stricter rules, where they can feel safe, where they feel better taken care of. So I think if you have two regulations, I would tend to go towards the stricter one if you want to position yourself as a business that takes this seriously and that cares for their customers. And I think this is an opportunity for some destinations to brand themselves as a safe destination, where customers, particularly from these highly risk groups, so that are more sensitive to this, can go and enjoy their holiday in safety. And perhaps Switzerland is one of those countries that can do that. So Natalie, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we are talking about processes, but with people are coming into it. So how many stakeholders at minimum needs to work together, because the supply chain is so diverse and quite large, etc. As we all know, being in this industry. So can you share your thoughts on what you think is sort of the minimum of people who need to work together that this works?
Look, it's a very good question. And it's probably one of the challenges of destination management, not just in terms of this. But I think every single business can make a difference. If you destination, perhaps there are some destinations where no one really takes this seriously yet, or not anymore. You can put your foot down for your business and say, we're taking this seriously. I'm taking care of my staff. I'm taking care of my customers. And that's what we're going to position ourselves at. So you might have much stricter safety guidelines than even the businesses surrounding you. And there will be guests that will be looking for that. So I really think this is a positioning opportunity. And every business one single business can already make a difference. The effect just gets multiplied if more actors in a destination choose to work together. But having worked in different places around the world, I know that that's sometimes a challenge. But at the same time, I think that this sort of global situation, global crisis, might accelerate some of this collaboration and alignment between different businesses, because in the end, if you're a safe business in an unsafe destination, you're still not going to get some of those guests wanting to travel there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to be the challenge, how to align. I mean, that's always a challenge in tourism, how to align stakeholders. However, I think this is extra challenging because, as you just said, otherwise it won't work.
Yeah, yeah. No, and it's once again a balancing act. You know, you can wait for everyone else to do the right thing, or you can be the company that leads in this. So I think that's the opportunity that you have there. And I think destinations that already have a brand that sort of is built on trust, you know, Switzerland, Swiss education, these are some things that that already have a very positive reputation around the world, and maybe keeping guests safe is one more here. So I agree. It's the 80-20 rule. You know, by doing a few things right, you can already have a huge effect. If you only get 20% of the stakeholders in your destination to align and to create this safe haven, then that will already help with the positioning, I think. And we see an opportunity in this positioning of yourself as a safe business or a safe destination. But in saying that, you need to have the right processes to keep it safe. Be it at a country level, making sure that your borders are tight, making sure that you have proper quarantine regimes in your business as well, contact tracing. So if something goes wrong, how will you inform your customers? How quickly? You know, all measures that a business can implement. Yeah. I mean, I have, and I think we would have time for one more question, I think, if anyone has one. But otherwise, I have one that I'd actually like to put to you, Bettina.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, because one of the things, obviously, that businesses say here, and is that processes are very expensive, especially some of the additional equipment that they might need to purchase, the additional steps that they might need to take. It's a necessity, but it still costs a lot of money. So how do you see this balance between you know, keeping people safe, but also keeping the business afloat, I guess, in some cases?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. I think I will go back to what I said before. I think for me, it's in the sense to think about, as of when does it make sense to open, but open really, and not in a half, you know, in a halfway. Because I think it wouldn't make sense to open without new processes, because there is new regulation. So it's almost a given that you have to adhere to them. So it's not a choice. And then it becomes a question of, okay, if I have to do this, what else can I minimize? Because I think there is a real case for, as you said before, going through the guest journey, but as well eliminate certain things, because people just at the moment, I don't see people personal rooming, or I'm sure they want human contact, but not all the time, and not very close, etc. So I think there are certain processes that can, and hopefully at least you can reduce your costs a little bit on those, more resources for the new processes. Or for example, I'm sure many people don't want their room serviced every day. When I stayed in a few hotels in the last month, they always said, like, we're not coming unless we, etc. So I think there is, as you said before, it's not only taking new processes and implement them all and having just more, but it's also a going through and reduce and think critically about what your guests and your customers want and need. And hopefully this will balance out the cost implication, but I'm sure not all. I think that's as well, that's the reality at the moment.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it is in general, this sort of process audit, this is a very critical point at the moment to do one of those. But in general, those are a good idea anyway. If you go through and think, well, what is our customer actually, and what just costs us a lot of money? Because sometimes if you optimize your processes, this is a good idea for businesses of all sizes. Unfortunately, you see a lot of small businesses don't do it. The processes are in the owner's heads, or maybe the owner and they do it differently depending on who's on duty. So you get inconsistencies right there. So, but I think that if we go back to the positioning part, and I think this is the big opportunity to position yourself as a safe business, a safe destination, then those additional costs, well, guests might be willing to pay for that. They might be willing to pay for that security. And then you can actually position yourself there and get more guests because you're following those protocols. So I think one of the key lessons I want people to take away from this is that this sort of process optimization is a good idea in general, but see these changes as an opportunity. At the moment, I see a lot of companies that I've talked to still running to catch up. But I think if we take a longer term view and don't think, okay, this is going back to normal soon, so why should we completely change? Maybe take a step back, take a blank piece of paper, sit down with your management team and have a think, okay, if we need to do this for the next 2 years, let's say, what would we do differently? Because there might be some things that you invest in upfront, be it a digital tool, an app, some new signage, some revised process materials for your staff, that will actually save you money over that 2-year period if you install it now. If you just keep running in crisis mode and just doing these regulatory processes on top of everything that you used to do, then it costs a lot of money. But if you can actually integrate it with your overall business model, I think then that you can offset these costs more easily. But and I think that might be easier said than done. Some assistance with this, because sometimes it helps to have someone external take a look at processes and to help you work through this as a sort of moderator. I've seen that work quite well. But in general, take a look at your processes and see how you can integrate these new things rather than having them as an additional thing for your staff or for your business to do. And I think that brings us to almost time, Jan.
Yeah, it brings us to time. Thank you, David. Thank you, Bettina. It sounds more interesting to talk about the big strategic pick, but I actually think there's a lot to be done in process optimization. And I also think it's not only about COVID, it's something which every business should do on a regular basis, overthink what you're doing. And my recommendation, I used to do it a lot in the energy business where I grew up. Make it simple for the start. Don't make it too complicated, because then you don't get there.
Mm-hmm.
Agree?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Absolutely.
There's no point in overcomplicating it.
Yeah.
Process optimization sounds so technical,
yeah,
but it's basically just splitting up everyone's roles and responsibilities and
Sure.
making sure they know what their job is, what they need to hand over to someone else, and what the end goal is in relation to the customer. That's why we start with the customer journey.
Bettina, David, thank you a lot. Good insights. let us hope that a lot of small businesses, medium businesses take up your ideas. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jan. And also thank you to everyone who's listening and for your questions, and enjoy the rest of the expo.
Thank you.